All right. Good afternoon, everybody. We have now our first severe thunderstorm warning of our line of showers and storms that's pushing our way across state lines right now from Alabama into western Georgia. So this, to give you an idea of where we're talking about, is just one severe thunderstorm warning that really stretches right now into Upson County and Pike and Lamar counties. I'll take this full screen so that you can see what I'm talking about here. But this is our lone severe thunderstorm warning that exists for our area at the moment. Pushing kind of into the northern tier right here of Upson County and then encapsulating Lamar and Pike as well. And if we're talking about kind of the overall system here right now, first let me tell you what this warning is for. It's warned most likely for the wind speeds here. But it is, if I'm clicking on this here to get more information about it, yeah, the wind gusts in this area are up to 60 miles per hour. So gusty winds have been the main thing that's been happening with these storms as they've kind of pushed across into the state of Georgia. And gusty winds is honestly going to be the thing that we're watching the most for kind of the rest of the evening here as this line pushes closer to us. So gusty winds right now entering into Pike and Upson counties, entering into Lamar and Upson counties, meaning that we have wind gusts right now up to 60 miles per hour. There is also a note here about penny-sized hail. So that's small hail, and the hail threat generally throughout the night tonight is not going to be quite as large as we've seen in the past couple of lines where we've had some pretty significant hail events for the last few weeks or so. So right now they are saying in the warning that there is penny-sized hail indicated within this segment of the storm. But when I flip over to our hail parameter, I'm not seeing anything at the moment. So it's possible that we may have already lost that hail core in the past few minutes or so. So again, that is the only severe thunderstorm warning for our area that we have right now. Further towards the north of this specific warning, we do have one that does not extend into our region, but this has kind of been the problem child, if you will, of this line for kind of the last hour or so as it pushed from Alabama into Georgia here into the western half, right over the radar really. It's spurred up several tornado warnings, and then also you can kind of just tell by the shape that it's taking here. This is what we call a Boeing segment in a storm, which you've probably heard us say many times before. That's when the winds get really concentrated into one area. So in terms of the strength of this entire line, this has been the strongest section just to the north of us here. In fact, I'll take it back for you just so you can kind of see how it's progressed over the last hour or so. And it's really been the area that I've been paying attention to sitting here in the studio the most. You can see how it starts to do that. It was kind of straight over in Alabama and then crossing state lines. As it starts to curve, that's when we started saying, okay, there's a little bit of bowing within this segment right here from about LaGrange all the way up to kind of the metro area here. And that's when we started to see some rotation in this area as well. And it's not quite as robust as it was earlier, but it continues to be, I would say, one of the stronger sections in this line. How about further south? Actually positive news, at least for right now. There are no more warnings on the further south section of this line here. So from about Thomaston down all the way to Crisp County, we're really not seeing any other warnings that are approaching this direction at the moment. So everything that you're seeing south of this one warning we have for Upson County is below severe thunderstorm criteria, which is a good news. But I won't say, I know we had some positive news with that yesterday in terms of things really starting to die down and we weren't really seeing a lot. I will say, even though it's dying down, or we don't have, oh, looks like we may have lost the radar over there in Alabama. Even though we don't have any active warnings right now, I do think this is actually one of those situations where if it kind of enters our area because of the unstable environment that we have right now, that we could see a few more warnings form from this line here. So that doesn't necessarily mean we're in the all clear from this line. It just means right now there's no warnings. So we'll take that as positive news at the moment. And we'll just keep our eye on it as it gets a little closer to our area. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to talk a little bit more about our severe thunderstorm warning that is over again in Upson, Pike, and Lamar counties. And then I'm going to time out to the best of my ability the line into the rest of central Georgia. I know that's been the biggest question that I've gotten all day today on my personal Facebook page and also in our weather network. So I'm going to do my best. Again, we only have the one warning, so it's been a little bit difficult to time this line out because when there's no warnings, we don't necessarily know how quickly the storm is actually moving. And something unique that this storm's been doing for about the last 2 hours or so is really slowing down. So it was moving at a really good clip over in Alabama. I was thinking, whew, okay, this thing is coming in hot. And then kind of right as it got to the state lines, almost similar to what it did last night, it's just kind of really slowed down. And it's been sitting in the same spot really for almost the last hour or so. It hasn't moved much. And I do believe that our specific severe thunderstorm warning right now is only moving at 40 miles per hour. So not super quick. We've definitely had much quicker movers in our area. But because this is our only actual warning, I'll go ahead and time out where this is heading here. So this is moving east. I'll do the whole box. And this is moving east at 40 miles per hour. So that does kind of outrun the polygon that we have here. If it kind of continues in this direction, it'll be heading towards Orchard Hill most immediately in the next 5 minutes or so. Barnesville by 4:22, Yatesville by 4:27, and you'll have to excuse me, I cannot read, so let me grab my glasses. There we go. That should be a little bit better. Okay, Box Ankle by 4:33, Forsyth by 4:41, Percal, excuse me if I'm mispronouncing that, by 4:48, Bolingbroke, so kind of heading towards the Bibb County area in the next hour or so, and then Lake Wildwood again by around 5. So because this is not moving super fast, I know there's been questions about what's going on in Bibb County, when will this be kind of in the Houston County area, and just generally areas further east than our western counties, and it's just going to take a little bit of time. I don't really think we'll be seeing this in kind of the Bibb County or Houston County areas for another hour or so. Depending on if it kind of keeps this speed here. So far, there really hasn't been a quick mover in the last little bit or so. And again, kind of showing you the progression, and it's moving almost due east here. So the sections that you're seeing just to the west of you, if you can kind of pick yourself out on the map. So about Upson County here would be getting this kind of section here, then the area that's over in Columbus would be heading towards Taylor County, and the region that even hasn't really crossed over from Alabama into Georgia just yet would be heading down towards Dooley and Crisp counties there. So just kind of the waiting game here for a little bit. And again, in terms of what we're watching with this, it's really going to be the winds there. Now, I know I did mention a few minutes ago that we had a, sorry, I'm just making sure I have everything from our digital team. We had a tornado warning earlier that was in this kind of more northern section of the line here. So we are going to be watching for that. There is a chance for kind of a brief spin-up tornado. I'm not really talking major tornado threat or kind of long track tornadoes or anything like that. But throughout the rest of kind of the evening here, while we watch this line creep into our area, it's just going to be something that I'm periodically checking on, just because we have what you guys have heard us say before, and I'll try to show you on the temperature map here, what's called a wedge pattern. So you may have heard us call this, I think Ben calls it a backdoor front, but it's where we're getting air coming in from the northeast here, and you can just tell by the temperature difference who's locked in under the wedge and who isn't. So the wedge kind of cuts us off right here in our northeastern counties. So why I'm bringing this up at all is because it kind of creates a little bit of a boundary edge for us there. So as this line moves into our area, it may run into the boundary of the wedge here, and that could spur up just kind of brief areas of rotation. So that's why it's something that I'm paying attention to. Again, it's not a major threat. I think the overall just kind of damaging winds is really the thing I'm paying attention to the most. But the good news is if you're well tucked into this wedge, like if you're up here in Eatonton, even in areas like Sparta, it's probably going to help you out with the severe weather potential, as opposed to having upper 80s like down in our southern counties. That doesn't mean I'm expecting anything insane down in the areas that are a little warmer. It just means if you're kind of tucked in under the wedge here, it may not be, the weather may not be able to reach that kind of severe thunderstorm criteria there. So that's a look at the temperatures and just kind of give you a background as to the environment that we have right now in our area. And with that, I'm going to go back to our active severe thunderstorm warning, and we're going to flip it over to the winds to take a look at what's going on with those right now. If you're just joining us, really quickly before I dive into a local scale here, here's a look at everything from pretty big picture here. Again, that line of showers and storms moving in from Alabama, it's continuing to make a due easterly push. So coming just directly easterly in from Alabama. And right now, the only active warnings, it looks like there are 3. One down to the south of us that really probably wouldn't be heading our direction here. And then there is one north of our area, just south of the metro, kind of just south of I-20. And then the one that does include a few of our counties here, which we are going to talk about now. So everything else that's kind of heading this way, if you're starting to hear thunder or you can see lightning, or even if it's just starting to rain a little bit, maybe you're in Talbot County or areas like that, everything else is kind of sub-severe at the moment, but it's stuff that we're still going to be paying attention to as we head into the rest of the evening here. So with that, let's talk a little bit more about this specific warning here. I'm going to flip this off and see if we can get a grab here of how fast the winds might be. And that may be just a little bit lower than how things actually are at the moment, or maybe not. This also could be a good indication that maybe the winds are slowing down just a little bit here. But originally this was warned for 60-mile-an-hour wind gusts. So if we're kind of dropping down below that, that could be definitely a good sign. But that was kind of the original reason that they went with the warning. Maybe we can try to grab our radar. Yeah, let's see if I can get a little grab from our radar here. And it's kind of showing the same story. So it is possible that the wind gusts now have kind of dropped down to where they're maybe not as gusty as they were just a few minutes ago. I think it's still possible with the warning still existing that there momentarily may be gusts up to 60 miles an hour. But right now it looks like at least some of the steady winds may be closer to about 30 miles per hour, which would be good news. That would mean that hopefully things are showing some signs of weakening. In terms of kind of overall strength and the shape that this area is taking, I'm not seeing a ton of bowing, at least heading into Upson County and Lamar counties right now, so that is also good news. Remember, I talked about this just a few minutes ago, but there was, a segment of bowing kind of up where that second severe thunderstorm warning is, and you can see even the shape that it was taking further in North Georgia than it is here. So that is kind of good news. At least right now we're not really looking at a major segment of bowing. And again, with the pixels maybe not giving us a great read on the wind speeds right now, we may be dropping below severe thunderstorm criteria here. I'm just checking in the National Weather Service chat to see if they've said anything else. They've been really awesome about keeping us up to date with the areas that they're watching and how they're issuing the warnings, why. The National Weather Service is really keeping a good eye on things today, so I think that they'll have some pretty good information for us as we watch this line move into our area. Other than that, definitely not seeing areas of rotation in this severe thunderstorm warning, so really no threat of that, at least right now, which is great news. Again, really it's just kind of heavy rainfall, some gusty winds from time to time, and then there is some lightning in there as well. We'll check back in with the hail also, because that was one of the reasons that they originally warned this storm. We had penny-sized hail within this area. I'm seeing maybe just in the very western corner of Upson County, a little tiny hail core right there, but it doesn't look to be too big. Yeah, less than half an inch in diameter there. So just something to be aware of. Of course, any size hail is something to pay attention to, but right now it's definitely not looking too large, so that is also good news. And that's kind of the name of the game with what I'll be doing this evening, is trying to pick out the pieces of good information that we have, and then we'll be rolling with it if it starts to look a little bit gustier. Let's see if we can take a look at the Columbus sky cam. I know yesterday we were able to see a little bit from there. I think the most of what we'd be able to see at the moment would probably be some pretty gusty winds, and it looks like actually one of the Columbus sky cams may have gotten knocked down. Maybe? It's really hard to tell sometimes if these sky cams are actually active. I need somebody to walk around down there or something like that. All right, let's see if I can play this out for you guys really quickly. It's gonna load one of our sky cams first, and then I'll swap it over. So that's a look at downtown Macon. Again, there's not a whole lot going on in areas where we have sky cams right now, so I'm doing my best to click around closer to Columbus and areas like that where the line is actually moving over right now, and we do have maybe a glimpse of what's going on outside. So that's a look at Columbus right now. Again, one of the main portions of the line is over Columbus at the moment. Not severe though, so the winds aren't too bad there. Probably still a little gusty, and you can see some heavy rainfall there that's kind of impacting the visibility as well. But other than that, not severe, so somewhat positive in terms of not having a warning there at the moment. And we got a update, it looks like, to our severe thunderstorm warning, so let's see. All right, maybe a brand new one entirely. So that's actually just north of Columbus that they just decided to issue a new severe thunderstorm warning. So we now kind of have two severe thunderstorm warnings that are at least tracking towards our area. This first one that we've been talking about for the last 15 minutes or so up here, including Upson, Pike, and Lamar counties, and then kind of continuing an easterly push towards Monroe in the next little bit or so. Now this is our new one that's not currently including areas that we would consider our viewing area, but it does stretch into Talbot County, and you'll remember these storms are pushing, let me make sure that's true before I say it. Yes, pushing east. So anything that's kind of east or west of us at the moment is going to be pushing east into our area before too long. And take a look at this, guys. This one is moving at 15 miles per hour, so really slow, even slower than our segment up here that's in Upson County. This one is 15 miles an hour is one of the slowest ones that I've seen in quite some time, so it really won't be making its way close to us before quite some time. Let's see if we can just go ahead and time it out. 15 miles an hour, it may not even outrun its box. Yeah, so that wouldn't even include Taylor County within the next hour. That is a really slow mover. Yeah, so severe thunderstorm warning that doesn't necessarily include us and also won't really be in our area too quickly. This whole thing has really just slowed down a lot in the last little bit or so. So those are kind of now the two warnings. You may have noticed earlier we did have another severe thunderstorm warning that was up just north of this one that we have here in Upson, Pike, and Lamar counties, extended from about I-20 down to the Griffin area. Now it has expired. So that was our, what I called the problem child earlier. This was kind of our issue area because it was having a really strong bowing segment, so really gusty winds within it. And then also this was kind of the only area in the whole line that was showing signs of rotation as it crossed state lines into the state of Georgia here. So now that it has no warnings, hopefully that means it's entering the wedge area. If you'll remember, I just talked about the wedge is going to be a much more stable environment, and it just won't have the fuel that this line needs to continue. So you'll notice that probably as a trend here, as especially up in North Georgia, this line continues an easterly push because the wedge is holding on to North Georgia even better than it's holding on to us here. So you can kind of see already how it's transitioned mostly over to rain. There's a few lightning strikes here and there in North Georgia, but if you're kind of north of I-20, things are calm and not really probably looking to get severe anytime soon. I actually believe that they're not even in the severe thunderstorm watch. So they're entering the wedge area, and that's going to be a stable environment. I think that's kind of what's happening in this little segment as well. Probably pushing into what's just generally a more stable atmosphere here, which may be good news for areas like Jasper and Putnam and maybe even northern Hancock County, because they may be included in that kind of more stable air up here. Further south, the air is a little bit less unstable. The wedge doesn't quite extend all the way south as our counties, unfortunately. So we do kind of have a little bit more of an unstable atmosphere, which is why I'm saying, even though we don't have a ton of warnings right now, we got to pay attention to this line as it creeps into our area just to make sure it doesn't try to act up with the environment that we have here. Speaking of the severe thunderstorm warning, which is not something that I've touched on yet, let me show that really quickly, and then we'll try to look at some more sky cams also. So this is the severe thunderstorm watch. Excuse me, I misspoke just a second ago. Watch means the conditions are right for a severe thunderstorm, but it does not mean that there is an active severe thunderstorm at the moment. So this just means all counties excluding Treutlen, Montgomery, Wheeler, and Telfair are going to have the right ingredients that we need to have severe thunderstorms until about 9 p.m. tonight. So this whole thing should be said and done by the time we approach 9 to 10 p.m. That is, if it starts getting a giddy up on here in the next little bit or so. It's really slowed down. And in just a second, we'll check and see if the models kind of have picked up on that stall. And I still think even with a little bit of the stall, it should be said and done by around 9 to 10 p.m. tonight. So not as much as an overnight event as last night was, thank goodness. And hopefully this whole thing can be kind of wrapped up out of our eastern counties by the time it's time to put your head on the pillow later tonight. So with that being said, let's check on the models and see how they're doing. So what I'm going to do is we're going to do it together. We'll look at the current radar right here, and we'll see if the graph model or if the HER model is initializing well, which means do the models show what's happening right now in their initial run. Let's take a look. We'll start with the HER model because I know earlier it was doing a pretty good job initializing. So yeah, not so bad. Maybe just a touch behind and maybe not quite as robust as what's going on right now, but generally not so bad. Does a fairly good job at showing what's happening right now. So if we play the HER model out to about 7 p.m., that's when it would be kind of approaching the Macon-Warner-Robins area here, which is a little bit slower than we had initially anticipated. But with the stall of this line, I could definitely see that being true. So let's kind of mark that loosely. We'll pencil that in. 6 to 7 p.m. could be kind of the Macon-Warner-Robins area, and then further into the evening, closer to that 8 to 9 p.m. would be maybe Dublin, Lawrence County area. And then again, we said this whole thing would kind of be knocked out of here by the time we hit 9 to 10 p.m. Remember, that watch expires at 9 p.m. tonight, and I don't necessarily think they have plans to extend it. So hopefully clearing our entire area by around 9 to 10, maybe latest 11 p.m. tonight. Now, I'll keep playing this forward because you may notice what's happening out further towards the west might look like another round of severe weather. I really don't think it is. I think after we have this line come through here, our atmosphere is going to be completely overworked and we're not really going to have another chance for severe weather. So there may be a little bit of rain, especially as you kind of have your morning commute Wednesday morning, but I think the severe weather threat should be over as we head into the late night tonight. And then as we head into the rest of the day Wednesday, we still keep this kind of messy pattern where we could have some afternoon showers and storms, but the severe weather threat in terms of an organized line like what we're seeing now should be relatively over. So that's the HER model. Let's do the graph as well. But let's give ourselves a memory refresher here of what's happening on the radar right now. And then we'll click over to the graph and see how it's doing. Not bad either. So neither model is doing too bad of a job picking up on what's going on right now. In fact, I may even argue that the graph is doing a little bit better, but it has the same kind of idea, 6 to 7 p.m. for the Macon-Warner-Robins area, and then pushing further into our eastern half by 7 to 8 p.m. So you can kind of see it in Dublin, Lawrence County region by 7 to 8, and then this one does have it kind of moving out of here quicker, clearing the area entirely by 9, but I'll say 9 to 10 p.m. just to kind of give it a little bit of leeway. And then same kind of thing, there may be a little bit of rain to start your morning off Wednesday, but the severe weather threat should be over heading into the overnight hours tonight. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of perspective. I'm sure I'm getting questions about timing. And to give you a little bit of a game plan here, I'm probably going to keep looking at these three, which we now have a new severe thunderstorm warning. You can see it glowing there. I'm going to keep talking about these three severe thunderstorm warnings for the next maybe 10 to 15 minutes, and then I got to give myself a little bit of time to get ready for the 5 o'clock newscast, and if you tune in, we'll just pick up right where we left off, starting at 5. So let's go back into our active warnings. Again, this is a look at the entire line here, and you'll see why I said we kind of got to pay attention as this gets into our environment here, because even as it's already tracked a little bit closer to Taylor County and leaving the Columbus area, we're already seeing a few more warnings start to spur up here. So no biggie, it just means that our atmosphere is really humid and it's really warm, and it has kind of more of the storm food that this would need to maybe spur up another warning or two. So we have our one severe thunderstorm warning that we had when we started this stream here, which includes Upson, Pike, and Lamar counties. And it's starting to kind of get to the end of its polygon here. So this does expire in the next 4 minutes. I haven't seen word from the National Weather Service here about extending this or pushing it further into Monroe County. They haven't really said anything about it at all. So in about 3 minutes now, we'll kind of see what they end up doing with this warning. But if we just use our own knowledge and check in on what's going on here, maybe check in on the wind speeds. Earlier we were struggling to find winds that were up to that severe thunderstorm threshold. Now I'm seeing them a little stronger. We were grabbing 30-mile-an-hour wind gusts earlier, now closer to 40. It'd need to be closer to 50 to 60 for it to be severe thunderstorm warning. So we'll see if they hold on to that. It's definitely more of your kind of run-of-the-mill severe thunderstorm here. I'm not really seeing anything that's making me say, oh my goodness, it's getting a little rowdy over in Upson County. I'm sure it's loud and it's definitely gusty there, obviously. 40-mile-an-hour wind gusts are still still pretty gusty, but not quite as bad as some of the severe thunderstorm warnings that we've seen in the past. So that's what's going on over in Upson, Pike, and Lamar. Further south, so kind of exiting the Columbus area, which is actually the sky cam that we just looked at a few minutes ago, we had the one severe thunderstorm warning here, this first polygon that stretched into Talbot County. And now we have this new one that kind of includes similar parts of the storm. It may look like it has a bit of a different direction, however. Okay, so this, give me a second to get my bearings with some of these warnings. I know sometimes these polygons can confuse us just as much as they probably can confuse you at home when they overlap like this, so I'm just trying to make sure I have the right information here. Okay, so we had this first warning, which is the one that's kind of got all the lightning strikes accumulating together there that you can see, and that one was supposed to be moving a lot slower. Remember we said 15 miles an hour, but this second one that they've just issued here about a few minutes ago, this box right here, this one seems to be moving a lot faster. They say it's moving at 40 miles per hour, but both sections are still moving east. So that could be an indication that the storm's kind of getting its giddy up back and that it may be moving a little bit quicker. So we could be seeing it here in the Taylor County area before too long. But let's time it out using our tool so we can kind of make that more of an accurate guess. That is 40 miles an hour due east. Again, the whole line is still moving due east. So generally speaking, kind of outside of our area, that would be Eelbeck area in the next 5 to 10 minutes, Geneva at 4:42, Brown Sand 4:53, and then heading into Taylor County, so Mock at 5, Butler at 5:13, Rupert at 5:14, and not all the way into the eastern part of Taylor County, so Reynolds, until 5:26. That'd be another hour from now. So faster than that 50-mile-an-hour segment for sure, and that could be an indication that maybe the storm's moving a little bit quicker now, which wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing. I would actually really be okay with this moving a little bit faster, just because it would mean that we could kind of make sure that it was out of our area by 9 p.m. tonight. I actually prefer for storms to move just a little bit faster so they can just get in and get out, and you don't have to sit under a bunch of winds and heavy rain for much longer. And the other thing is, we've also kind of had a lot of rainfall with the past couple of lines that we've had here in the last few days, so I don't necessarily think we really need this storm to sit in the same place any longer. Yeah, take a look at the rainfall totals from just the last 2 days. In that Columbus area where the storm's still sitting right now, close to 5 inches of rain in the past 2 days. And where that line is tracking towards Taylor County right now, they already have seen up to 3 inches of rain there also. So we don't really need rain. Maybe our eastern counties could use some more because these lines keep coming in from the west and they seem to lose their strength as they push further towards the east. So yeah, that's the other reason that I wouldn't mind if they started moving a little quicker, just so we don't really like rack on the rainfall totals in the spots that really don't need them there. But that's just kind of a look at those. And we don't have any flash flood warnings or any flood warnings or anything like that at the moment, but it may be something that we keep our eye on here throughout the rest of the evening. So it looks like we lost our severe thunderstorm warning for Upson, Pike, and Lamar counties, which is good news. That means we were kind of on the right track there with the wind speeds dropping down below severe threshold criteria. So the winds that are going on now in the Thomaston area and in the Lamar County area, not severe, still gusty. Remember, we saw kind of a 40-mile-an-hour wind gust, which to me means they probably still have a special weather statement, which I can check here on my phone. So it's still a little gusty, but it's definitely not severe, which, like I said, the name of the game will be taking good news where we can get it here this evening. Let me take this further down to our 2 warnings that do exist. Unfortunately, it looks like we may have lost the radar that's over in Alabama, so maybe can't grab quite as accurate of a reading as I'd like to, but we can try to use our radar here. It really just may not give us a great idea of what's going on. Let's see if I can, but probably not. Yeah, it's definitely not 0 miles an hour. So unfortunately, I have to wait till this one gets a little bit closer to Taylor County to really figure out what's going on with the winds. But if we're just going based on what's happening with the warning here, that was warned for wind gusts up to 60 miles an hour. So definitely could assume that we're still seeing wind gusts like that. And then I'm seeing a pretty bright spot down there just north of the Lumpkin area, but that also may just be because of how far away we are from the radar, but it may indicate that there's some pretty gusty winds going on here too. So we'll see if that means any more warnings may be coming our way in terms of severe thunderstorms. You can kind of see that too if we flip it over to the reflectivity. It definitely got some dark red values, so the rainfall is coming down pretty heavy there too. And again, we just kind of got to pay attention to this as it enters our area, because we checked in on temperatures a minute ago, but in case you weren't with us, we have our wedge pattern here, which is keeping the northern counties under better news because it's keeping them at lower temperatures. This northeasterly flow is locking them under and keeping them cooler and more stable. Down here in our southern counties, I mean, take a look at that. That is almost a 20-degree temperature difference from our northern counties all the way to our southern counties. So it's a completely different picture down there. And this is just generally more unstable air. Remember, thunderstorms are kind of like cakes or baking. You need certain ingredients, and one of those is really warm temperatures. So if we're just plainly looking at the temperature map, you can kind of pick out the areas that I'll be paying attention to the most as this line comes a little bit closer. The areas that are in the north are still under the severe thunderstorm watch, so it's still something we'll be paying attention to, but I think the chance for actual severe thunderstorm warnings is greater down towards the south. Let's check in with the dew points also. I think it's fairly consistent across the board. Yeah, everybody has relatively high dew points, meaning everybody's pretty humid. The moisture content is at least there for most places, so not a huge difference with that. It's really the main difference being temperatures there. But that's just kind of a look at what's going on with the atmosphere. And we'll flip it back over to the satellite and radar. I'm going to give it another 10 minutes here on the stream until I take some time to go get ready for the 5 o'clock newscast, and then we'll pick up where we left off there. But nothing else except for those 2 severe thunderstorm warnings, which is great news because this thing was coming over here with a punch when it was over in Alabama. Look how just tighter it is in terms of the rainfall as well. Let's flip over to this radar here. The line was just a lot more organized. You had more of that clear straight line section and more rainfall that was just kind of concentrated to the leading edge of this front. Crossing state lines, it's just kind of changed shape, which it often does as we have storm systems moving in from Alabama into Georgia here. First of all, one of the most notable changes was this section kind of here along I-20 started showing signs of bowing, and this was our problem section as well. This was the area that had wind speeds that were getting really strong, had some tornado warnings as well, and then also just the whole line kind of changed shape as well. It got a little less organized coming into the western part of the state. Still has plenty of lightning, and definitely it still has some gusty winds, but the overall straight line organization of the whole thing is not looking quite as impressive as it was earlier. Still, we're paying attention to it. Remember, we're still under the severe thunderstorm watch until 9 p.m. tonight, and we'll see how this kind of interacts with our atmosphere here. But generally, it was looking a little bit better. Although I'm seeing a little, yeah, man, it's tough to lose that radar there because we could get a lot better idea of the details on this line as it comes closer to our southern counties. But without that radar, it's a little tough to just kind of use ours here because these areas, so right here, are really on the far edge of the radar, which means when we try to flip it over to velocity, get an idea of wind speeds, or try to get more detailed numbers, it doesn't really do quite as good of a job because there's too much noise there on the end of the radar. But I think even just from that, you can kind of tell, it looks like here is getting a little bit gusty there. So we'll see if they end up, let me see if they're talking about it at all either. In the chat here, I'm seeing a lot of damage reports in the chat, not from our area specifically, but from that area I was talking about earlier that was up in more North Georgia. This section that's now looking a lot better, but there is a lot of damage reports from Carroll County, so this Carrollton area here. They had the severe or excuse me, the tornado warning. So they do have damage reports from that warning and just generally from how gusty the winds were as it came across there. So that's most of what I'm seeing in the chat is damage reports from those areas. But let me see when these two warnings expire. And this one may have already dropped, and they may have kind of combined it with these two, but that won't be until 5 p.m. I think at that time, we'll get an idea of if they're going to issue some warnings into our area, because I'm just realizing we don't have any active warnings in our area specifically, at least for the counties that we consider to be in our specific viewing area. So with that being the case, I think I'm going to jump off here for the moment so that I can use some of this time to get ready for the 5 o'clock newscast. If we do end up getting a warning for any counties next, I believe it would be if this section here holds on to its strength as it comes into Taylor County. So we'll be watching kind of this area of the storm as well as the area just a little bit further south of it. So right here, tracking towards Macon, Dooley, and Crisp counties. Those are kind of the sections that still have a little bit of gustiness here and where we may see a warning for our counties here before too long. But the actual warning that was over here in Upson has been dropped, and this polygon extends just kind of to the western end of Taylor County. So let me come back on the screen here. With that being the case, I think we're gonna just keep our eye on this. Remember, it's moving slow, so we're playing a bit of a waiting game for some time here. And coming up in the 5 o'clock show, I'm gonna time out when we can expect to see it in different areas. I'll use all the models that I kind of showed you there a few minutes ago, and we'll just keep our eye on this thing until, remember, around 9 to 10 tonight. So not too bad. It's really not an overnight event, but we'll be kind of watching it through the rest of at least the evening here. And then hopefully, like I said earlier, the whole thing can maybe be said and done by the time we get closer to bedtime tonight. So with that being the case, I'm going to jump off here, and I will be back on 13 WMAZ in about 20 minutes for the 5 o'clock newscast. And if there's updates to warnings, specific things like that, then we'll go ahead and kind of address those on the show. So thank you for joining me, and we'll have more information coming up here before too long.